Welcome to this peaceful moment, a place where you can slow down, breathe, and let your body relax. Take a deep breath in and let it go slowly. Feel the tension begin to fade, little by little. I'm glad you're here, and if you enjoy this kind of calming content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next sessions. Now, let's begin our journey into relaxation and calm. Long before the first villages rose from the earth, before tools became more than sharpened stones, and before humans understood the rhythm of seasons, a small band of early people lived on the edge of a vast savanna. Life then was not measured in years or achievements, but in sunrises survived and nights endured. Every morning began the same. The men would leave camp to track animals, sometimes for food, sometimes simply to understand their movements. The women searched for roots, berries, and leaves, their eyes trained to read the land like a quiet language. The children ran barefoot, chasing each other among the trees, unaware that the world they played in was older and wilder than anything their young minds could grasp. But the river tested them each day. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the water red, a deep thudding sound rose from the reeds on the opposite bank. The tribe froze. They knew the sounds of deer, boar, even predators like lions, but this was different. And then they saw it. A massive crocodile, larger than any they had imagined, slid silently toward the shallows. Its back broke the surface like the spine of some ancient creature. Its jaws, long and bone-hard, glimmered faintly in the dying light. It moved with the confidence of a ruler patrolling its domain. For days, no one dared approach the river. They drank from muddy pits farther inland, washed quickly, and fled back to camp. But fear, if left unattended, becomes an enemy worse than any beast. Finally, the leader decided they had to face the creature. Before sunrise, the men gathered. The plan was simple: lure the crocodile into a wooden trap built in a shallow crossing, block its escape, attack together, survive. Simple, but not easy. They waited for hours, the heat rising around them like steam. Sweat rolled into their eyes. Muscles trembled from remaining still, just when doubt began to spread. The water rippled. The massive reptile glided forward, step by step. It moved toward the shallows and entered the trap. The leader dropped his hand. The men pulled heavy logs into place. Closing the path behind the beast, the crocodile thrashed violently, its tail smashing water into the air. The ground shook with each strike. One man stumbled, another nearly fell into the creature's jaws. But they held their ground. They drove spears into its thick hide. The wood snapped again and again. The monster twisted, lunged, roared with a guttural sound that echoed across the plain. Then, Oren's spear struck its eye. The creature bellowed, blind with pain. That moment was enough. They attacked together, shouting, stabbing, pushing through their fear until finally, the giant fell still. When it was done, the men sat breathless in the mud, their bodies streaked with water and blood, their chests heaving, but in their eyes burned a victory deeper than survival for the first time. They had conquered something that once ruled them while they hunted and fought. Ira, the sharp-eyed woman of the tribe, spent her days near a small pool inland. She played with seeds, planting them in soft soil, watering them lightly. No one understood why she bothered. Plants grew everywhere. Why tend to a few tiny sprouts? But Ira saw what others did not. Weeks passed. The plants grew into small, vibrant patches of green. When she harvested them, she found the seeds had multiplied, clean, edible, easier to gather than chasing prey across the plains. She approached the leader and said quietly, "The earth gives back, if we give first." He did not fully understand her words, but he understood the evidence in her hands, and so they built the first storage pit, lined with stones, covered with wood and leaves, for the first time in their lives. They were not living day to day, but storing, planning, and preparing. A seed of civilization was beginning to sprout, but stability brings new dangers. One morning, after a stormy night, they found footprints near the camp. Human footprints, many of them, smaller than their men, larger than their women, and unmistakably not from their tribe. The prints led toward the forest. That night, no one slept. The leader sat beside the fire. Oren watched the darkness with tense eyes. Ira hid her seeds somewhere no one could find them. They all knew the truth. They were not the only humans walking the earth. Another tribe existed somewhere beyond the trees, a tribe that could become friend or threat. And so, that chapter of their journey ended, not in silence, but in anticipation. For the early humans had begun to change. They had learned to hunt with strategy, to gather with thought, to plan, to store, to plant. They had begun to understand fire, land, and each other in the quiet hours before dawn. The leader looked at his people, sleeping close, safe for now, and realized something profound. Survival was no longer enough. Now they were shaping a future. Above them, ancient stars watched silently. Below them, the river whispered as if recognizing the birth of something new, from fear and cold and hunger. Humans rose, and for the first time, they understood that they were not simply creatures of the earth. They were its makers. From that spark, the long human journey began, the story of humanity. In the days that followed the discovery of the strange footprints, an uneasy stillness settled over the tribe. Even the wind seemed to move differently, whispering through the grass in a cautious hush. The forest, once a familiar boundary, now felt alive with hidden eyes. Every sound, a snapping twig, a distant cry, a rustle in the leaves, became a possibility, a warning. But life did not pause. The children still needed food. The fire still needed fuel. The river, though dangerous, was still the tribe's lifeline. So the leader gathered his people at dawn. His voice was low, steady, almost ceremonial. "We are not alone," he said, "and the world will not change for us. We will adapt as we always have." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of something larger than anyone there could name. Over the next few days, the men scouted farther and wider than before. They found more signs: ashes from an old fire, a cracked tool stone, and a fallen tree whose bark bore the unmistakable marks of stone blades. Whoever these other humans were, they were close. Oren took 3 hunters with him and ventured deep into the trees. The forest was dense here, roots twisting beneath their feet, branches interlocking into a roof that filtered sunlight into a perpetual twilight. But Oren moved with the confidence of someone who had grown up reading the earth like a living story. They found a small clearing, scattered with footprints, some fresh, some older. A piece of animal bone, scraped clean with skill. A braided fiber strip, something used to tie tools or carry bundles. "They are like us," one hunter whispered. "No," Oren said. "They are not like us. Not yet. We do not know their hearts." He felt the truth settle in his bones. Meeting them could bring friendship, or it could bring the end of everything they knew. Ira's vision. Meanwhile, Ira continued tending her hidden plants. She took seeds from the strongest ones, replanted them in separate spots, and protected them with stones so animals wouldn't trample them. She noticed something remarkable. Plants grown with more space became taller. Plants given more water grew faster. Those shielded from wind survived storms better, without naming it. She was discovering the idea of cultivation. One evening, she approached the leader Anoran with new seeds cupped in her hand. "These are ours," she said. "Not from the wild. Grown by us. If the others come, if they are hostile, then this will keep our children alive." The leader looked at the seeds as if they were something holy. Oren looked at Ira with something like respect, and something deeper. "You think of the future," he said. "I think of survival," she replied. "But not the survival of today, the survival of the next seasons, the next years." Her words stayed with them long after she walked away, the night of the voices. Several nights later, long after the fire had burned low, they heard it. Voices. Human voices. Distant. Faint. Drifting through the trees in a chorus of murmurs. Not the calls of animals. Not wind. Not imagination. Real. The tribe stirred. Mothers gathered their children. Hunters reached for spears. The leader stood silently, eyes narrowed toward the darkness. No one approached the camp. The voices passed like ghosts through the forest and vanished. But the message was clear. The others were near enough to watch them. No one slept until dawn, preparing for what comes. The leader made a decision. "We will not wait to be found. We will prepare." They strengthened their shelters with thicker branches. The men sharpened new spears. The women prepared more food, drying meat over slow flames to last through uncertain days. Even the children were taught to read the land more carefully, to sense danger in the subtle change of a bird's call, or in the sudden silence of insects, and Ira taught them something new: how to plant the seeds she had nurtured, how to choose good soil, how to dig without harming the tender roots. The tribe listened to her with a seriousness that surprised even her. She was no longer merely a gatherer. She had become the keeper of knowledge. It happened on a morning thick with mist. Oran and two hunters were tracking a herd of antelopes when they reached a patch of tall grass. The herd's scent was fresh. They crouched low. Then Oran heard breath, human breath, just beyond the grass. He signaled for silence. From the fog emerged three figures. Humans, but not from his tribe. Their hair was braided in a strange pattern, their bodies painted with ash-white streaks. They carried long, narrow spears tipped with black stone unlike anything Oren had seen. Their eyes were sharp, scanning the land with practiced focus. They froze when they saw Oren. For a long moment, no one moved. The air was heavy, thick with tension. Even the birds seemed to hold back their songs. Oren slowly lowered his spear. He placed it on the ground. A gesture of peace. The strangers looked at one another. Then the tallest among them stepped forward and mirrored his action. A single moment of understanding passed between them. Fragile, uncertain, but real. But the meeting ended abruptly when a sudden roar thundered from the trees. A massive boar, startled by their presence, charged out of the underbrush. The strangers scattered. Oren jumped aside. Chaos erupted. The boar vanished into the mist, leaving behind only broken grass and trembling breaths. And when Orhan looked up, the strangers were gone. No tracks, no voices, no trace. As if the fog had swallowed them whole. But he knew they would meet again. Weeks passed. The air grew cooler. Storms rolled across the plain with the power of ancient gods. Food became scarcer. Animals migrated south. The river swelled and changed course. The tribe faced a test greater than any beast, a test of endurance. Yet something had changed among them. They shared food more carefully. They planned hunts together. They built stronger shelters against the wind. And Ira's plants grew taller, stronger, enough to feed many. They were no longer a simple group of wanderers. They were becoming something else, a community shaped by shared fear, shared work, and shared hope. And in the leader's heart, a new thought began to form. If they could survive the beasts, if they could survive the storms, if they could learn to shape the land, then perhaps they could survive the other humans as well. Perhaps they could even learn from them. Perhaps the world was wide enough for more than one tribe. They rose before the sun most days, long before the first warmth touched the valley floor. Darkness was not their enemy. It was simply a part of their existence, something they had learned to move through with instinctive caution. The ancient humans who lived in that remote corner of the world understood that survival favored the patient, the observant, the ones who could read silence as clearly as others read speech. They walked lightly over damp earth, each step chosen, each breath controlled. The world around them, still young, still filled with titanic beasts and unpredictable seasons, demanded this constant awareness. As time passed, their hunt for the giant bull mammoth became more than a task. It transformed into a gradual unfolding of knowledge. They learned its moods, its favored path, the angles at which the sunlight flashed off its tusks. They watched it during the warmer days, not just from afar, but from the shifting edges of its world, moving with the wind, learning to understand the meaning behind its grunts and the rhythm of its steps. On certain evenings, they crouched behind low shrubs as the mammoth scratched its hide against old stone, sending echoes across the land. Every detail mattered, the way it lifted its trunk to taste the air, the slight limp in its right hind leg, the pause it made before lowering its head to drink. The hunters grew older and wiser through these quiet studies. They sharpened their tools, carved bone hooks, corrected the curvature of spears. Their survival was a long equation made of endless adjustments, errors made, losses mourned, knowledge gained, and resilience rebuilt. Their tools improved because their minds sharpened. Their minds sharpened because the world around them forced them to keep learning. One of the younger hunters began practicing silent approach techniques more obsessively than the others. He learned how to place his feet on cold leaves without causing a whisper. He trained himself to breathe so lightly that mist barely formed in front of his lips. He could now approach deer close enough to feel the heat radiating from their flanks. His elders noticed this skill, and they relied on him more and more. Through him, they learned which animals were restless in the night, where the wolves shifted their camps, and how the mammoth's herd responded to certain disturbances. When the season of longer shadows arrived, the valley changed. Fog crawled over the plains most mornings, and the mammoths kept closer together. Wary of predators, the hunters used this shift to their advantage. They no longer relied solely on endurance. They used the weather, the shifting winds, and the uncertain haze to mask their movement. They crept with measured confidence along routes they had memorized over years. Eventually, the day of the hunt arrived not as a moment of sudden decision, but as the natural culmination of everything that had preceded it. The mammoth separated from its herd just as they had predicted. The mist rolled in thick and heavy, muffling sound and obscuring distance. The younger hunter, leading the group now, signaled subtly with 2 fingers and a slight tilt of his chin. The others spread into formation, each knowing his place. Not one word passed among them. The wind cooperated, sweeping their scent away from the animal. They approached from 3 sides, moving like the quiet closing of a great stone door. When they were close enough to feel the vibration of the mammoth's breath through the ground, they struck. Spears flew in arcs so practiced that they had become extensions of thought. The mammoth roared, a rumble that tore through the fog like thunder tearing through a cloud. But the hunters held fast, anchored in purpose. They moved with coordinated precision, some distracting its charge, others plunging spears into its weakened flank, others driving it away from escape routes they had anticipated. The battle was not short, and it was not easy. The hunters risked their lives with every step. But gradually the great giant's strength waned. Its breath grew ragged, its movements slower. When it finally fell, its collapse shook the earth itself, echoing through the valley like the ending of a long, ancient struggle. The hunters stood in silence for a moment, not in triumph, but in acknowledgement. They respected the creature they had pursued for so long. They respected the immense gift it represented. Meat for weeks, bone for tools, hide for warmth, fat for fuel. Nothing would go to waste. Their survival depended on honoring the life that had ended, so they could continue their own. As they worked, cutting through the thick hide and dividing the tasks evenly, the sky began to clear. The first warmth of sunlight seeped into the mist, turning it golden. They spoke softly now, voices low but steady. They recounted each detail of the hunt, both mistakes and successes, ensuring that every piece of knowledge would be preserved for the next season. The next challenge, the next generation. In the evening, as they carried their heavy loads back to camp, the valley felt different. It was quieter, emptied of the tension that had filled it for so many weeks. The children ran out to greet them, eyes wide with awe, and the elders stepped forward with nods of recognition. The hunters had not only provided food, they had reaffirmed the bond between their people and the land. A bond carved through equal parts, struggle, respect, and understanding. That night, as firelight flickered against the cliff walls, the warmth of the mammoth's fat burning steadily, they told the story again, not as a tale of conquest, but as a testament to endurance. They spoke of patience, of adaptation, of listening to the land. And as the children listened with wide eyes, they carried that lesson forward, ensuring that long after the mammoth's remains were gone, the memory of the hunt would continue to shape the lives of those who followed. For in that distant age, before cities, before writing, before certainty, survival was not a moment. It was a continuous story, written in footprints, in firelight, in breath, and in the unyielding will to endure. In the end, their story was not one of strength alone, but of understanding, of a people who survived by listening to the land, respecting the creatures they hunted, and passing their hard-earned wisdom from one generation to the next. Long before history had words to preserve them, these early humans carved their legacy into the earth itself, a quiet testament to resilience, cooperation, and the timeless will to endure.